China's investment in Africa continues to grow, with the Asian superpower becoming a major player in many sectors on the continent. Joining us now to discuss China's investment here is Dirk Kotzer from Beijing Axis. As Bernard Swanepoel left, Dirk, he said, you've got the right guy to tell us about what happened at the mining conference. There's quite a lot of interest now, isn't there, from Chinese investing in mining in the country?
There's been interest for several years in investing on the continent, most certainly. Chinese enterprises generally still consider South Africa to be a gateway into Africa, or a base as it seems, but also there are quite a few investments that have come off in the past few years. China is becoming more attuned to conditions in Africa. They don't approach Africa with a one-size-fits-all approach, as may have been the case 10, 15 years ago. So I'd say as the volume of investments and interest is increasing, so also is the general astuteness amongst Chinese investors, and that's good.
What about with Seaworld? I saw a little presentation by the CEO, the local CEO, non-Chinese, who, well, maybe he wasn't the CEO, but certainly the person representing them here. There was a lot of fuss when they came in. The Chinese bought this platinum operation, but it doesn't seem to have done a whole lot since.
Well, they are advancing the project. They're still in the development phase, and they're looking at starting production in 2018. I think it's been a fair success. A lot could have gone wrong given the situation in the mining industry in South Africa. They were, in a way, insulated against the labor unrest because they're still in the development phase. I think that they're doing quite well on balance, given the fact that we've been through a fair bit of turmoil in that part of the country, especially in the last year.
And generally speaking, though, drive around Johannesburg and you'll see China cities are springing up pretty much everywhere. Top of Jan Smuts Avenue, there's a whole big shopping centre, same in the south of Johannesburg as well. Yet if you would like to get a visa to come to this country from pretty much anywhere else in the world, if you're a trader, you're going to struggle. What's going on?
I think there's supply and there's demand. There's the huge demand locally for cheap manufactured goods. I think the general mainstream retail companies don't cater too well to the lower income bracket. And for that reason, a lot of Chinese traders have come into the country.
Legally?
I can't tell you the numbers, but I would assume some of them do overstay their visas. But I think by and large, if they want to operate above board in Johannesburg, certainly they have to have some type of permanent residency permit or a visa or so forth. I think more interesting is the trend of local South African people traveling to South China to buy clothes and handbags and accessories and bring that back and trading that locally. I think that's a very, very interesting development where you see local street traders, really, people of low income traveling to China and starting an international import-export business.
Well, you've teed up our next guest, Hein Kuchlenberg from Leopards Leap. He joins us now from China. He's over there. Hein was on the program a little while ago telling us about the relationship that he's done with a Chinese firm and, of course, selling Leopards Leap wine into China. Are you making much progress, Hein?
Yes, Alec. Obviously, I think the whole Chinese market cooled down a bit from a wine side, and expenditure is down in China, especially on government-related entertainment. But I think it's down for maybe for a short-term period of about 35% down. That's what the people tell me now. But it will bounce back by next year, I think.
And you need somewhere else, given what's happening in our country. Aaron Motsoaledi, the health minister, yesterday, having a full go at your industry. We know that last week, Pravin Gordhan said no more wine for politicians at the functions in government. So is that part of the motivation to try and find export markets?
You know, to find the export market in Europe is now very difficult because of economic crisis that you find in Europe. I think there's too much product available. And the problem with too much product, then you don't get to margins, and then it's not viable for us to do a business. So you need to look for markets where you can live.
And this story about not being allowed to advertise in South Africa, it appears now that is going to be fact. There's a draft bill that has been approved by Cabinet. Is that going to affect the industry, Hein?
Surely it will affect the industry, but we as an industry must also realize that we have a social responsibility. There's a lot of alcohol abuse going on. So, there's two sides of the coin here. And we as an industry must realize it as well. The fact of the matter is some people will lose jobs, and it's a lot of money that must be spent. We do a tourism that us is much more related to
well, that was Hein Kuchlenberg. Apologies, the quality of that line just dying towards the end there. But thank you very much for joining us. He's in the southernmost island of China, he was telling us before we went on air. Getting back to Dirk, just from a broader perspective, there is criticism now that becoming a member of BRICS has maybe not been a good thing for South Africa. Would you counter that?
I can't see why it would have been bad. I mean, BRICS for a start is not really anything physical, concrete. It's only an association of countries that meet every now and then. It's one of a whole collection, a whole alphabet soup of associations and treaties that countries belong to. There was much activity around that last year especially, but I think there have been no real obligations on our side towards the other countries. It's more a case of feeling out other potential trade partners, trying to balance our relations with the US and with Europe with an Asian leg. So I think there's, on balance, not much that could be wrong with that.
But we've almost become China-centric in South Africa, certainly from a ruling party. The deputy president was there just the other day. Every member of the cabinet, I understand, has now visited China on a working mission. Yeah. Is that healthy, given that there's huge differences in the bureaucracy in China has been going for thousands of years? Ours is not that, not that sophisticated, and so on.
Well, it is the world's second largest economy, so it is relevant to us. And China is moving into Africa in a very pronounced way. I think during the Mbeki era, certainly we did not move fast enough. There was a reluctance to engage China. I think certainly the Zuma administration has come fully on board to treat Chinese trade relations and other relations with the gravity it deserves. So I think one shouldn't look at becoming too China-centric. I think our government has a fairly balanced view across the world. China-centric, well, maybe trying to develop relations and enhance it, and I can't see much being wrong with that.
Well, it would have been interesting if the Chinese were dumping poultry products into South Africa, whether we would have had duties, or if the Chinese had not told us that Dalai Lama could not come to Bishop Tutu's 80th birthday, whether he would have arrived. We're listening to them. They're telling us what to do in certain regards, and we are certainly listening.
That's something we have to sort out. That's bilateral issues. We have to determine issues of how far sovereignty extends. In any relationship, there's a bit of give and take. If the issue of Dalai Lama or poultry or dumping issues, in a complex, intricate relationship with your largest trading partner, there will always be issues, political and trade and otherwise, that come up, and we just have to learn to deal with that. In the same way as we have been dealing with difficulties with European countries and with America and other countries around the world for decades. Those relations have not been without incident. So I think one should not be too alarmist about difficulties that arise with the Chinese relationship, because that's normal.
No, don't be alarmist, but don't be supine either.
I totally agree.
What's likely to happen in this relationship as we go forward? You said Mbeki administration was not exactly proactive, whereas the Zuma administration might have gone the other way. Are we likely to see these relationships develop further?
I think it will settle into a general understanding of what we are willing to give and willing to receive, and same on the other side. The Chinese economy is growing slower than or at a slower rate than 5 years ago. So China's role in the world is also becoming more and more settled. The world and politicians around the world, over here certainly, are more likely to accept China as a power in the world. The US certainly has made it very clear that they welcome China's rise, at least its peaceful rise. So I think the world is much better geared nowadays in a globalized village to accepting a fast-growing, large new member that may be a bit more assertive given its enhanced power and size than the world would have been 100 years ago.
So it's nice to be pals with a new cool kid, which is what we are.
Well, we have to shape that relationship to our own advantage.
And how do we do that?
We have to be sober-minded and realistic about this. We should not be hubristic about China. China is going to be a large power in the future, but they aren't going to be the only power. They are going to have difficulties on their development path. One should not try and latch onto the next big thing in the way that you may try to find to hitch your fortunes to someone's wagon. I think we have to maintain our multilateral portfolio in the world. Independence, our own, preserve our own view of the world, of a multipolar world.
But are we likely to? I mean, of course, I don't think anyone would disagree with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But given the way that the political wave is flowing, are we likely to retain that, or are we going to become even more China-centric?
I think it's too early to tell. I think at the moment, much of what we're seeing is a function of the way that economic winds are blowing in the world. Europe is not such a great play at the moment. The US is recovering on the back of huge stimulus and printing of money, so to speak. And China is still powering ahead at 7% or more a year. So I think our government would be irresponsible if they did not take that into account in defining our trade relationships.